Hey guys, how's it going? Sam here and welcome back to the channel. So this is part 2 of my video series on how to paint like Blizzard. In this video we're going to be looking at a piece of software called Character Creator, and we're going to look at my 3D model and kind of how I produced it. So with that, let's get started. So what you can see right now is a program called Character Creator. I believe I got this on sale for £170. I believe now it's £200. They'll probably have sales constantly. And to be honest, I think it's worth the money. So this has been part of the process. That's why you're going to see it here today. So with my piece that I was creating to look like Blizzard, I needed, as you can see from the final result, it's quite an extreme character proportions, which you wouldn't get with a normal human 3D model. So I needed something to change it, or I needed to do that in 2D. So I found this piece of software. I saw someone use it online. I thought it looked really interesting, and to be honest, it's the piece of software I've been looking for years, and I didn't know it existed. This is the 3rd iteration, so it's probably been out a few years. I had no clue about it, so if you've heard of it, you know, fair play, but I hadn't. So I wanted to create this video just to give a quick run through on what it is and how it works. As you can see now, I'm basically messing around. I recorded this before I'm doing the audio, so it's not going to really relate, but the general idea is you can create a male or female, also a gorilla, weirdly, I don't know why that's in there, but you can adjust the proportions. So as you can see down the right hand side, you've got columns showing, you can adjust the body in extreme detail, so you can adjust forearms, you can adjust the eyebrows. It's actually created with the intention of animation, so you can animate the whole face and export the animation from this piece of software. For my purposes, I use it to create quick meshes of characters using proportions that I want. So example, with this piece I wanted him to be quite short with a big head and big arms, because Blizzard tend to use very big hands, chunky hands, big wrists, big arms, and quite muscly legs, so that's what I kind of went for. In the one you'll see me do, I'm kind of creating a generic fat person. It ends up being quite muscly as well as fat, so you could use that, you know, as if you were doing a big beastie character, this would work out quite well. But like I said, you can make a female or a male, and there's really no limitation on how far you can push it. You can go to an extreme. The really brilliant thing that I absolutely love about it is that you can export OBJs and FBXs. So this piece of software does actually come with some pre-chosen poses, but I prefer to export it, take it into any modeling software you use, whether that is ZBrush or Maya or Blender, whatever you want to use. But the best thing about it is that it comes rigged. So when you take it into, for me I took it into Maya, it comes as a rigged model that then you can adjust it to pose it however you want. And for me that's just amazing. For the money, I think it's well worth it. It does bring me on to a point of, should I be using this in professional work? I think the answer is yes. Should you be using it as a learning tool? I think the answer is yes, but that comes with a caveat. If you cannot draw it without the piece of software, then you also need to learn that skill alongside it. So don't take this as I never need to learn how to draw because this exists. I don't need to learn anatomy because this software exists. I wouldn't view it that way, because you'll become quite unstuck quickly when you don't have the piece of software. This will probably be slower than a professional artist drawing if they're very capable in anatomy. So use it as a learning tool, or use it in your final pieces, but make sure you keep up with your anatomy knowledge. Make sure you learn how to draw it as well as using this software. Don't use this piece of software as a crutch, but instead use it as a learning tool. Something that I am going to be using this for is to take it into ZBrush and then edit the mesh, so detail it, completely change it to see, you know, how that process works, because I can imagine for creatures and monsters using basic anatomy to begin with and then warping it and distorting it in ZBrush might be really useful. Again, obviously you are better creating the mesh from scratch in ZBrush, and I would definitely recommend practicing that. But the way I would view it, let's say you're in a studio and they have this piece of software, they've paid for it and they want you to use it. You might turn around and say, well, I'm not going to use that because it's not developing my full artistic skill. Well, you're going to be wasting time if you can do that faster. That a studio always wants you to use the fastest process you can. So if they use this software, and it is intended for studios, this piece of software, then you'd be stupid not to use it. That's a bit like not using photos in, kit bashing paintings, and matte paintings, not using photos, rather painting every texture. It's not necessary. Unfortunately, that is the reality with commercial art, but you need to streamline your process. Now, this piece of software may work for you, it may not. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. If you think it will be something useful for you, I think it will help anyone if you use it as a learning tool. And you might get some better results from it. I know so far I have. I enjoy using it. And I really like using it when I can't be bothered to draw anymore. If I'm too tired, or if I've had a long day and I'm just like, I don't fancy drawing, then often I jump into this piece of software. I mess around until I've got something that looks kind of cool for a character, export it, and then save it for later. I can always open it, pose it, any way you want, and sketch over the top of it. You don't need to use it in the final result. You can use it just as a training aid. But I really recommend it, so give it a go. Let me know what you think, and now we're going to jump over to see how I've used it in the piece and look at my 3D model. So this is the 3D model. So as you can see, this was the final result from what I took from Character Creator. Excuse me, I'm going to hide these walls quickly just so we can see what's going on. Okay, so as with all of my 3D models, I tend to set up a camera and create a Arnold render view, which basically means I can always see the render as I work on the image. So there is some trickery as far as what is realistic in the 3D scene. So obviously you should try and create it as realistic as possible, because then you know it's going to be right. But I wanted the character to be a certain size, and that required his feet to go through the floor. You never see them, so it's not an issue. Don't let yourself get caught up with being too realistic, because if you take renders constantly, you'll see what needs to be done. The scale of him needed to be a certain size, and it was easier for me to make him bigger really quickly. His feet going through the floor, as you can see, rather than do it all correctly and make the table move and move the camera and, change the aspect ratio of the camera. So just remember why you're creating it. You're not creating it for a perfect 3D model, you're doing it as a means to an end for a good 2D image, or at least I am. So that is the character from the Character Creator. As you can see, I've adjusted his nose, made the nose really big, made the ears really big. As you can see, he's got massive hands. So yeah, I've also added some slight 3D modelling for the clothing, the pauldrons on his shoulders. They're obviously not the final design, but I wanted a basic geometric shape so I could understand the perspective, especially his left, the way we see is his right shoulder. At the angle it's at, the camera is obviously round about here, that's what you're seeing. You can see you don't see much of it, so drawing that in would have been quite tricky. So I've just added these in really quickly, took a few minutes, and it saves me the hassle later on, so I can just sketch over them and completely obviously repaint it. I won't use the 3D model at all for those. I've obviously created all the bottles in the background for the scene. I've made these a transparent material, added a material inside, which I'll show you if I can select this. There you go. I've basically duplicated the bottle, shrunk it down and made it a colour, and then made the glass transparent, given them corks. Most of them are duplicates, and then I've just adjusted them in some way to make them all look a bit different. So I created 4 or 5 bottles and then duplicated them over. I made a few books, made this really simple rack. As you can see, none of these, the modelling on this is all horrendous, it's all just random cubes basically, but it gets the job done. And then on the front, as you can see, I've got these door handles on this table. The table doesn't make sense at all as it is, but you only see a very small section of it, so it doesn't matter. I've created a pestle and mortar, and like I said, a few books, a candle holder. Making sure I've always got that render going, placing objects in, making sure there aren't any weird tangents, making sure the character's the right scale and it's looking the right way. Looking back at the final piece now, I wish I changed the head slightly as far as the angle. I ended up, as you can see here, it's looking slightly up, and when I paint it, I end up losing that and it kind of becomes a bit front on, so that's something I'll talk about during the painting stage. I have a light here, and that basically is what gives me the lighting in the scene. I create an ambient occlusion render and a just a normal diffuse render. And that's about it for the 3D model. It's pretty simple, but it gets pretty good results. So I actually exported the character you saw me creating earlier on, and I have brought it into Mare, as you can see here. So it brings it in absolutely perfect. The model, the mesh, they're actually really good quality. They're really simple for the amount of detail they have, which is great, obviously, especially for ZBrush. You'll have no problem working over the top of them. But I really wanted to show you how easy it is to adjust the rig. So as you can see here, there's a skeleton running through the model, and I can use the rotate tool to really quickly pose a character. Now, obviously, knowledge of anatomy and how characters move and weighting really will help create a realistic character. So if you have no knowledge whatsoever, it actually won't be that easy to create a realistic body, because you won't understand how bodies move. So you might find playing around with this will really give you a great understanding of how anatomy works, and it will help your drawings without you needing to draw. So as you can see here, I'm just making really crude adjustments to the anatomy by moving these different bones, and you end up with some pretty good results pretty quickly. Obviously mine's going to be really bad here because I'm not spending any time on it, but if I just quickly turn this model into the view, as you can see, that's how easy it is to adjust. You can change obviously the hips, and you can rotate as much as you want. So if you want a character bending down as an example, you can have them hunched over as well, like this. Really easy to develop poses that are actually relatively hard to draw. So if you were going for something at this kind of weird angle like this ribcage would be very difficult to draw. So like I said, it's really useful, and you can see how I've used it so far. I just wanted to give you this quick demonstration to see how useful it is with the posing, because if you've never posed a 3D model before, you might not understand what I meant. So in the next video, you'll see me starting the painting process of this 3D model. I would love to hear your thoughts about this process, kind of behind the scenes, what you think of it. And obviously you've seen the final piece, so it's a bit weird, but if you have any ideas on how the piece could be improved, it would definitely be good for me to know. And if there's anything you've learned from this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So that's it, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.